Yo, wagwan people, what's really good? And welcome back to my channel. And today I want to do something a little different. In recent tutorials I've made a lot of dark beats, but today I want to break down how I made this TrapSoul R&B beat. So let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. When I started making this TrapSoul beat, I started off with these pads. Now I got these pads from the Analog Dreams contact library. And this is the name of the pads right here, Sensual Background. And this is what the pads sound like. As you can see, there are a lot of notes in this piano roll, but I'm only using 2 chords. So I'll break it down and show you what's going on. So I'll mute all these top notes for now. And I'll mute these root notes here. So at the moment, I'm working in the scale of C sharp minor. And these 3 notes right here, C sharp, E, and G sharp, make the chord C sharp minor. So these 3 notes are the first chord within the scale. So this is a triad. Triad chords are 3 notes. Now this next chord is D, F sharp, and A. Now this makes the chord D major. So this is a D major triad chord. But the difference here is in the C sharp minor scale, the notes are C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and B. But as you can see here on my second chord, I'm on the note D. But what you can do is in any key scale, you can drop the second note by 1 semitone. And in this case, I've dropped the D sharp note to D, and this turns it into a Phrygian mode. Now the Phrygian mode is where you take the second note in any key and flatten it. When I say flatten it, I mean drop it by 1 semitone. In this case, like I said earlier, is D sharp in the key of C sharp minor, but I've dropped it 1 semitone to D. And now the reason why I've done this is because when you start experimenting with these different modes, you get different feelings and different emotions from these chords. Now all these top notes here are more or less just the same chords as what I've played down here. The difference is on this triad chord here, the C sharp triad, I've added this top note here, so which has turned it into a 7th chord, and then the same here, I've added this note which has also turned this triad chord into a 7th chord, and then all these notes here are just the same notes here. So I've just copied and pasted it into a higher octave, and it's the same with these top notes here. I've just copied all these notes and pasted it into a higher octave, and then these 2 notes here at the bottom are just the root notes of these chords. Once I was happy with those chords, I went and added some effects. Now the first effect that I added was an auto filter, and the only thing I used here in the auto filter was the cutoff, and as you can see it's at 63%. Now the reason for me doing this was because I wanted to filter out some of those higher frequencies. Now some of you may be thinking, why didn't I just use an EQ? I like to use a filter because it's a creative tool, whereas an EQ is more of a precision tool. And with auto filter, you get things like distortion, you get LFO, and you get envelope. And with an EQ, it's more of a precision tool where you can go in, isolate particular frequencies, remove them or enhance them. And with an auto filter, like I said, it's just more of a creative tool because you've got more things you can do with it. You can automate the different things in there and stuff like that. So this is why I've chosen to use the auto filter. Next I added the channel EQ, and as you can see I low cut it by 236 Hz just to make space for my kick drum and my bass. And then I added a direction mixer, and as you can see it's at negative 38 degrees. Now what this direction mixer does, it takes the left and the right signal and moves them both anywhere you want to pan it. So if you want to pan it to the left, it's going to take the left and the right signal both at the same time and pan them both to the left. Or if you wanted them both to go to the right, they will both go to the right. Now the difference between this direction mixer and the panning knob right here is that with the panning knob, if I turn this all the way to the left, what this does is it only allows you to hear the left signal and it mutes the right signal. So with the direction mixer, you get more of an accurate signal when panning, because like I said, it takes the left and the right signal and moves it anywhere where you want to pan it. Whereas the panning knob right here, it just mutes the one side so you can only hear the other side. So the direction mixer is more of a precise tool, and the panning knob is just something you just want to do quickly on the fly. Next, I added a sound shifter. Now with this sound shifter, I pitched it up 3 semitones, and also with this sound shifter, it's on my main Melodies output channel. So everything that goes through my Melodies output channel is also pitched up 3 semitones. So now everything is in the key of E minor. So this is what the pads sound like now with all the effects on it. Next, I added some lo-fi bells which I got from Analog Lab, and this is the name of the bells right here. And they're from the sound bank Source Volume 3 by Max Shooter. Now with these bells, all I done was I took the previous chords that I used for the pads and copied and pasted them. And then once I had done that, I bounced it down to an audio file. And then the first effects that I added was some H delay, and my timing is on 1/4, my feedback is on 60%, and my drawing was on 45%. Now the reason why I added this H delay, because I felt it just needed just a bit more bounce. Then I added some Valhalla shimmer, and then the reason for me adding this Valhalla shimmer was to add some more ambience and a bit more vibe to the bells. Next I added some channel EQ. And as you can see, I've taken everything off below 240 Hz. And then I've also gone up to 280 Hz because I just felt in that particular area it was just a bit too muddy. So I've taken some of that muddiness out. Next, I've added the direction mixer. Now this direction mixer is panned plus 38 degrees to the right. Now this is what it sounds like all together. Next, I added an accent, which I made myself, and this is what it sounds like. And with this accent, I added some effects, and the first effect that I added was some Valhalla Uber mod. Now I've added this just to add a bit of texture and some chorus, and my mix is on 25%. Then I added some EQ, and as you can see, I've low cut it by 245 Hz, and this is what it sounds like all together now. Next I added another accent, which I got from the Waves Create Sound Source Kit Volume 3. The link for all the sound kits that I'll be using will be in the description box below, and this is what this accent sounds like. And then I added some effects to it, and then the first effects that I added was a sound shifter, which was pitched up by 12 semitones. Next I added some reverb, which was the Valhalla Vintage Verb, and my mix is on 32%, and my decay is on 4 seconds, and my mode is on concert hall, so it's quite a big reverb. And then after that I added an EQ, and I took off everything below 335 Hz, and then in this particular area here at 1K I took out some of those frequencies just to help tame some of that harshness. And then lastly I added the direction mixer, and as you can see with this direction mixer, it's panned plus 33 degrees to the right. Now this is what it sounds like with the effects on now. After that, I added another accent, and I got this accent from the Accent Essential Sound Kit Volume 2, and this is what it sounds like. And then the first effect that I added to that was a sound shifter, and I pitched it up by 1 semitone just to pull it back into key. And then I added a half time, and my timing is on a quarter, and my mix is on 100%. And then lastly, I added an EQ, and I took out everything below 386 Hz. Now this is what it sounds like with everything so far. Next, I added another accent, which I got from the same kit, Accent Essentials, and this is what it sounds like. And then I added some effects to it, and the first effects that I added was a sound shifter, and I pitched up 1 semitone just to help pull it back into key with my song. After that, I added another sound shifter, but with this sound shifter, I pitched it up 12 semitones. Next, I added some H delay, and my timing is on a quarter. My feedback is at 60%, and my drawing wet was at 28%. Now I've added this delay just to add a bit more rhythm and bounce. Lastly, I added an EQ, and I've taken everything out below 374 Hz. Now this is what everything sounds like together so far. And then lastly, to finish off the sample, I added the flute. Now I got this flute from Arcade, from the Sanskrit Air Library, and this is it right here. And here are the notes for it, and this is what it sounds like. So once I was happy with that, I just went and bounced it down to an audio file. And once I bounced it down to an audio file, I started adding some effects. And then the first effect I added was an EQ. And as you can see right here, it's heavily EQ'd. So I've taken everything below 739 Hz. And then here at 529 Hz, I've taken out some of the muddiness. And then here at 2K, I've given it a slight boost just to help give it some more presence in the higher mids. And then right here around 7K, I've boosted it just to give it some air on that top end, just to make it sound a bit more crisp. And then after that, I added some compression. Now this is the R compressor from Waves. Now I've used this compression just to help balance the dynamics of the flute. Next, I added an R-Vox. Now I've used this R-Vox to furthermore enhance the dynamics just so I can get a more balanced sound. And then lastly, I've added some Valhalla shimmer. Now I've added this Valhalla shimmer just to add a bit more ambience and a bit more atmosphere to the flutes. Now this is what everything sounds like together so far. Once I was happy with all those melodies, and when I got myself a percussion loop. Now I got this percussion loop from the Only One Percussion Loops Volume 3 kit, and this is the one right here that I chose, and this is what it sounds like. And then I put an effect on it, and the effect that I chose was an EQ. And as you can see, I've taken everything out below 184 Hz, and then I've also taken everything above 805 Hz just to help shape and tone the perc loops. Then I added another perc loop which I got from the same kit, and this is what it sounds like. and then I added some effects to it, and the first effect that I added was an EQ. And now this EQ is more or less the same as the previous EQ. It's just that with this one I've taken everything off below 488 Hz, and then everything above 3K I've taken it off once again, just to help shape and tone the Perc loops. And then lastly I added some reverb. Now this reverb is from the Waves bundle. The amount of reverb that I'm adding is only 17%. Then I added another 2 Perc loops. Now I got these 2 Perc loops from Splice, and this is what the first one sounds like. Now this comes at the end of every 8th bar, and then I added some effects to it, and the first effect that I added was an EQ, and I've taken everything below 400 Hz, and I've taken off some of the highs just above 12K, and this is what the second Perc loop from Splice sounds like. And this comes at the end of the 8th bar as well, and the first effect that I added was an EQ, and this is the same as the previous one. Lastly I added some delay, and then my timing is on 1/8, and my wet is only on 30%, and my feedback is at 16%. Now this is what my Perc loops sound like with my melodies. Next I added some bass, which I got from the Signature R&B plugin, and this is the bass that I used. This plugin is quite underrated. I don't see many people using it. I love it because it's got some great sounds in there, especially like those traditional R&B synth basses, and this is what this bass sounds like. And then the only effect that I added to that was some dimension expander. Now the reason why I added this dimension expander was to make the bass just a little bit wider. Now this is what everything sounds like together so far. After that, I added some drums. Now all the drum sounds, they're from the kit's Anomaly, which was made by Trophies, Balenciaga drum kit, which was made by Only One, and then some of the sounds are from Splice. Once again, all the links for the sound kits that I'm using, they will be in the description box below. So to start with, I added a snare, and this is the snare that I chose right here. Now this one's from Splice, and this is what it sounds like. And then next I added another snare just to back up the main snare and just to layer it and give it some more body and some more thickness. And this is what it sounds like. Now with both of those snares I added an EQ. So with the first snare, as you can see, I've taken everything out below 197 Hz. And with the second snare, I had taken out everything below 380 Hz. Now the reason why I'm doing this on my snares is, once again, I'm always making space for my kick drum and my bass. The reason why you have to do this is because in the mix, the low end is so important, because that's what takes up most of the energy within your mix. So you've always got to save space for that low end, meaning your kick drum and your bass. Next I added another snare, and this is what it sounds like. And then with this snare, it's panned to the left, and as you can see right here, it's panned -28 to the left. I also put an EQ on it, and I've low cut it by 835 Hz. Then I've added another snare, and this is what it sounds like. Now with that snare, I added an EQ and I had taken off everything below 13k, and it's also panned to the right by plus 32. Then I added one more snare, and this is what it sounds like. And I also added an EQ to that snare, and it's heavily EQ'd, and I've taken everything below 15k, and this is also panned to the right by plus 27. Next I added some hi-hats, and this is what it sounds like. Now with this hi-hat, all it is just a 2-bar loop. So all of this, I've just looped it for the whole 8 bars, and I didn't add no effects to that. Lastly, I added some open hi-hats, and this is what it sounds like. And then to finish off the drums, I just added a kick drum, and this is what the kick drum sounds like. And then I added some effects to it, and the first effect that I added was a transient designer, and I think I explained this in my last video. So what a transient designer does, it helps enhance the initial attack of any sound. So in case of this kick drum, it's enhanced the first initial hit. As soon as it comes in, it's giving the kick a bit more snap and a bit more punch. Now you do that by increasing the attack knob here. Now I found with this kick drum, just increasing it just above 3 decibels was enough, just to help it to cut through the mix a bit more. And then lastly, I added an EQ. Now this is the Perc EQ, which is from Waves, and my low frequency is on 100. Then I've boosted it just over 1 dBs, and I've added this EQ just to add a bit more presence and a bit more punch to the kick. So now I'm going to go ahead and play it so we can have a listen and get a feel of the vibe. That's the end of the tutorial. Now I'm quite happy with how the way this one turned out, and I hope you all feel the same. But more importantly, I've hoped that you've learned something. So please like, share and subscribe, and until next time, peace out.